Hello and welcome along to the Souness Revolution episode 1. Before we get into it tonight, obviously I released a post on YouTube to say that this will be the final members video. We are moving over to Patreon. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to offer the YouTube members a free month's subscription on Patreon because Patreon doesn't allow it. So what I'm going to do is we have a live show coming up, dates to be confirmed. So if you are a member and you're watching this, please get in touch with me on Twitter, send me a message on the post on YouTube, and we'll sort you out with half-price tickets for a live show, and you'll get first dibs as well. Okay, doke. Any questions at all, just put them in the comments, and at the end of the episode, I'll hang back for 5 minutes if you want to chat or talk about it. But anyway, on to the Souness Revolution episode 1. I must confess, I was born in 1989, so I did not see any of Souness, so I've got no idea why I'm here. Cammy, Wilf, I know you remember it because you're in your late 60s. Brian, you're a wee bit younger, you're in your late 50s. Wilf, before we come to, obviously, Souness and the impact that it had, just what were Rangers like the few years before Souness came in?
Not very good. That's putting it politely. I'm actually just sitting here while the intro was going on. I just had a look back at the season before Souness arrived, and Rangers finished 5th in a 10-team Premier League, and they only finished 5th on goal difference. If they'd scored a couple of goals less, they would have been 7th, which is ridiculous. I mean, the crazy thing is that 5th place still got them into Europe, which was mental. But no, we weren't very good. I mean, we hadn't won the league in a long time. We'd won a couple of cups, but that was it. It was just, wasn't great at all.
What's your memories, Cammy, then of? Because I mean, obviously you were born in the 60s, or was it the 50s? So what's your memories of the kind of 80s? I suppose, really, apart from the last couple of years, the 80s for Rangers.
Well, to be honest with you, it was just Rangers were very much a cup team, as Wilf said. You know, the League Cup, we were good at winning the League Cup, the odd Scottish Cup. We were good in the 10 and 6s and stuff like that. You know, but as for competing for a league title, a million miles away. You know, and that was probably the first few years that I went to my first game at Ibrox, 1981. So I was still a young lad at this time, and I don't think he quite grasped how bad it was, because you were young, you were still excited about going to the games, but we were getting beaten off Hearts and Aberdeen and Dundee United and Celtic on a regular basis. And Wilf says when Souness was appointed, I remember the game, the last game of that season, we beat Motherwell at Ibrox to qualify for Europe. It was a day that Hearts bottled the league up at Dens Park, and that was just how Rangers had fallen. And fortunately, after that, Souness restored us to our rightful place. But it was a grim period as a young lad. I was probably one of the few Rangers supporters in my class at school. Everybody was like sheep. They were literally following Aberdeen sort of thing, you know. So it was very much, I was one of the few Rangers fans, but I got the last laugh after that.
Obviously, like I say, I was born in 1989, so I don't think in your first couple of years you do much laughing, Brian. I'm kind of hoping you remember it, because that's the reason why you was free on, and the reason why I'm asking the questions. Why were Rangers so poor in the 80s, and what was going on for younger people who might watch this and it's hard to say, only remember the good times after what's kind of happened in the last 9 years, but why were Rangers so poor?
I mean, we won the league in 77, 78, and then the years after that, I was looking back, we were 12, second to second year, third the next year, and then after that we were 15, anything between 12 and 15 points behind the league. We were just, I think there was a lot of players there at the time that probably shouldn't have been there, and they were just hanging around. And when Souness obviously came in, I was looking at this two squads from the two seasons, and from 85, 86 to 86, 87, there was 12 of the 25 from 85, 86 managed to stay on when Souness came in. So that tells it alone. There was a lot of players there that either weren't good enough or, too old and past it. And Souness came in and wielded the axe, and the rest is history, as they say.
I don't know.
Well, what you've got to remember is the late 70s, early 80s, we were rebuilding Ibrox. So, and rebuilding Ibrox came at the detriment of the squad. We couldn't attract the so-called big name players on what was sort of sensible wages at the time, because we were spending all our money in basically rebuilding three stands of the stadium. And then by the time we had rebuilt the ground in the early 80s, saw the Aberdeen and Dundee United come into the fore under Alec Ferguson and Jim McLean. I mean, Jim McLean at Dundee United, you couldn't get players off him because he had them on like 400-year contracts.
Yeah.
You signed for him, you couldn't get away. I mean, that's what happened when we eventually signed Richard Goff, and he had been at United, and they wouldn't sell him to us. So even when we did try to sign decent players, we couldn't get them because the guys like that, they had basically the two so-called the new firm in the East Coast didn't want anything to do with, didn't want dealings with us. But that was why our squad was so poor. As Brian says, we had guys here just hanging about. They were on long contracts. We couldn't get rid of them, and we had spent all our money rebuilding Ibrox.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, sorry, Brian, just very quickly. Jedi Bob, good evening, lads. Good evening, Jedi. How are you, my friend? If you have any memories, because I'm obviously I have no idea what age you are, but if you've got any memories for the Souness era, please do get them in. Anybody watching who's got memories of that era, please do get your memories in. Sorry, Brian.
Can I just say before, see what Will's talking about, Aberdeen and Dundee United. We tried to get Sir Alex Ferguson and Jim McLean to replace John Gregg. Neither of those, they didn't want to come to Rangers. I mean, the idea of that now, they knew their budget was going to be less and that sort of situation. It's just, to look back on that, it's just Sir Alex Ferguson knocking back Rangers. I mean, obviously there's a bit of history there as to what happened when he was a player, sort of thing, but it's it just wouldn't happen now. Say Dundee United had
no, Cammy, it did happen. Derek McInnes knocked his back.
Hallelujah.
I mean, I was going to go on to say there about the attendances, right? In 80-81, we were averaging about 20k. 81-82, we were averaging 18k. 82-83, 17k. 83-84, 22k. 84-85, 21k. 85-86, 25k. And a 44,000 seater stadium. That was our average attendances. So that just shows you what the fans thought of it. They weren't very happy.
Yeah, I mean, back then you had the season ticket. I mean, season tickets weren't really a big thing back then.
No.
It was only kind of after Souness came in that the season ticket kind of revolution came, if you like. But they used to have a season ticket. Martin, you won't be aware of this, right? And I never had one because I didn't have a season ticket until after Souness' first season, because that's when I moved to Aberdeen, and I was in college and I had time to go to games and things like that. But they had a thing called a Rover season ticket, and you could basically go into any of the three new stands. You couldn't go into the main stand with that, I don't think. But you could go into the Copeland, the Broomland, or the Govan, and just go and sit in any seat you like with this Rover season ticket. Now, could you imagine pitching up at Ibrox in the present day saying, "Tell you what, I'll just go into the Copeland today and I'll sit in that seat there." You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that there was a season ticket that you could just go and choose your stand and choose your seat on a game by game basis.
Listen, I just have to bring up Curry Muncher. So this is my last member video I'll be able to watch. I wanted to do this for one last time. And he has put a comment in which I will read out, even though this isn't a usual podcast. This is a separate series. I have to make this clear. We are moving to Patreon, so the only thing that's moving is the member stuff. So your Souness Revolution series will be doing Ibrox through the years. Our Sunday podcast will be live on Patreon. All the other podcasts are still free and available on YouTube. So Curry Muncher, if you want to sign up to Patreon, you can. If you don't, it's absolutely no problem. We will still be live every Thursday, Europe depending, on YouTube. And match reactions will all still be on YouTube, and any breaking news stuff will all still be on YouTube. So I'll bring this comment up. So I went to the barber's today and took a pic of Martin's fringe to get his thoughts. I laughed and said to the barber, "It's a guide dog." He said it was a guide dog that cut his hair. Thank you very much, Curry Witcher. Thank you very much. Right, so back to the series, Cammy.
I hope Curry Muncher's coming to the live show. I tell you.
Well, he's not getting the half-price ticket that members are getting.
He gets a half-price ticket and a signed Martin picture.
A signed picture of my fringe. Cammy, so at the time then, was it well known that Souness was coming? Was it a big secret? Or was it just a bolt out of the blue?
April 86. It was probably back in the days when newspapers did break stories. Graeme Souness is going to be the next player manager of Rangers. You know, I mean, wow. He played the bulk of his career down south. He was obviously playing with Sampdoria. And I think, wow, we just, I don't think anybody saw that coming, sort of situation, you know. So it was very exciting. Even now, to look back, 35 years ago, it revolutionised Rangers and Scottish football as a whole, you know. But it came from nowhere. It wasn't one that it was like when we appointed Steven Gerrard. There was a wee bit of discussion over it. Is it going to happen? And Gerrard went on BT Sport, and then 5 or 6 days later, he was appointed as the manager. Souness just basically, I think he maybe shared the story with Jim White. I think Jim White was with STV at that point. He got access to him, and he came to Rangers. He obviously didn't become Rangers manager until the pre-season, you know. But I think his input was obviously there from early April.
So on that then, because listen, it's hard, especially for younger people watching, to imagine a world without social media, to imagine a world where you have to rely on all your news from newspapers. Brian, what was your kind of reaction then? You see Souness rock up at Ibrox. Were you more excited in Souness the player, or were you more excited in Souness the manager?
Probably the player, because obviously he hadn't managed before. He came across as player manager. So you were just getting this icon of British football coming across and rocking up at Ibrox, and the nice cool suit, as they said in the video, the Italian tan. He just looked the business. And I mean, I remember when they broke the news, it was a case of, Jock Wallace has left, and by the way, we're getting Souness as manager, as player manager. So they announced it as they announced Wallace got the sack. But I mean, I was looking at stats and stuff. I mean, Souness never managed a team before. We hadn't won the league in 9 years. The Liverpool icon came to Rangers, won the league in his first season. Gerrard, Liverpool icon, never managed before. Huntley won the league for 9 years, but you know, we got it eventually. But the similarities were there. 2 Liverpool icons managed Rangers and both won the league, you know. So it was brilliant.
Brian, you've just gave away that he won the league in the first year. I mean,
No.
Some people might have not known that.
Oh,
you know,
sorry.
You've just ruined it. Well, what about yourself then? I've got a comment in for Adam. Born in the 70s, I remember Souness coming to Rangers. I think he changed the course of Scottish football. I wasn't a big fan back then, but I remember my mum chanting his name. So there you go. Were you chanting Souness's name as he came through the doors at Ibrox?
Not as he came through the doors. I don't think I would have been, because it's, as you say, it's one of those. It's pre-social media. Everything was through the newspapers or one of the 3, possibly 4 TV stations at that time. I think Channel 4 was maybe a thing then. You know, everything. I mean, news was so much slower. There was no 24-hour news channels. You know, you only knew found things out when you got your morning paper or you listened to the news on the radio, and it was a big deal, but it wasn't nearly as big a deal as, for example, Steven Gerrard was, because there wasn't the same amount of blanket coverage of it. But the timing was good, because there was always a chance that he was always going to revolutionise the club. and when we'll get on to future episodes, he revolutionised the entire of Scottish football, because Graeme Souness coming to manage Rangers coincided with English clubs being banned from Europe.
Yeah.
You know, after Heysel, and it meant that, you know, he could attract some big name players, and I know we'll come on to that, as I say, in future weeks. But he must have been made some sort of promises, because I mean the reason that John Gregg left was because of money, and when Jock Wallace came in, he wasn't given any money. You know, and then as I said at the start, we started the season he came in, we finished 5th in the league, and then he just came in and revolutionised a lot overnight. You can't do that without money, even back then. You know, it's nothing like the money they spend these days, but it was still considerable money that they had to back him with.
Well, I think at the time as well, Wilf, did the Lawrence Marlborough not take over just before Souness with the big money for the Lawrence group?
Yeah. Well, he took over. He took over from, I think it was his grandfather, John Lawrence. I think he took over from his grandfather, and he brought in David Holmes. Now it was David Holmes, the chief executive, who brought in Souness.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that's often forgotten. And then winding it forward, it was actually Souness that brought in David Murray. But again, we can get to that as we go on. Jumping ahead a little bit there.
Yeah, I don't think that's somebody's name that I really want to mention on any podcast that I do, apart from maybe if we do a series on him.
But it's one of those things that it was Graeme Souness that brought him in, because they knew each other, you know, and Souness knew that Lawrence Marlborough was wanting shot at the club, because I mean Lawrence Marlborough, who was chairman of Rangers, was holding board meetings in Dublin because he couldn't come back to Scotland because he'd have to end up paying tax.
Nah.
You know?
I've got a comment.
This is members only, so I shouldn't be Tim's watching this, so the tax experts won't be able to jump on it. So,
well, as it is members only, although this will be going out on Patreon tomorrow, I really don't know whether I should read this comment out by Curry Muncher, but do you know what? I'm gonna. My missus used to chant his name during sex. My next door neighbour, Graham, must have heard her, as he always gave me a smile when I went to work down south. See, I knew there was a reason. Curry Muncher didn't like me very much. I know. Cammy, Curry Muncher's also said, look, I can remember when he was announced, and to be honest, I was not happy. It was his attitude more than anything that I disliked. Can you understand? In fact, I wasn't about. And was there fans that weren't happy about Souness signing?
I don't. Very difficult. Yeah, as Wilf says, with regard to social media, you don't get the same social media message boards like follow and all that sort of stuff. They weren't things at that point. I think Souness he'd played all his football out with Scotland. Wasn't massively popular when he played for the national team. When I would say Rangers fans probably did take an interest in the national team at that point, but he just had that arrogance, you know. It's one of those people love that or they hate that sort of situation, but I think it's just part of his personality, and he had that arrogance when he was the Rangers manager sort of thing, you know. But as I say, I was too young to give an opinion on that sort of situation. I was just excited that Rangers were going to hopefully be signing better players, and Rangers were going to be winning more games, and so on and so forth, you know. But Souness is, I think, has mellowed as he's got older, you know. But I think it was very much, he had that arrogance, and I think there was just a bit of dislike because he played all his football out with Scottish football, and here's this fancy Dan coming to Scotland, you know. But I don't think it was the opinion of Rangers fans. Rangers fans just wanted a successful team on the park.
Yeah, there was a thing round about then between the, as Cammy says, between like, and for where Scotland was concerned, between like the sort of home-based guys and the Anglos. You know, the press. I seem to remember the press made a big thing about that. You know, they would always kind of try and compare. They preferred the guys that played all their careers in Scotland. Their attitude towards them seemed to change when they moved down south. And guys like Souness that had never played in Scotland, they always got a hard time because they'd never played up here.
Sorry, I think Souness, when he came in though, he just had that, well, as Cammy was saying, arrogance, but he just had that sheer belief that, well, I'm going to win things and there's nothing going to stop us doing it. It was as simple as that. He just had this single-minded belief that, well, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to make a difference and we're going to win things. Because he had done it all his career.
Well, exactly. That's what he was. He was a winner. Yeah. I mean, he'd won European Cups with Liverpool, and at that time, Liverpool were the best team on the planet. You know, without any question. They were magnificent, and he was right at the heart of that. And that's all he'd ever known was winning. So he wasn't going to go up here and, you know, compromise what he was.
No, he wasn't going to accept anything less than winning.
I have to say, obviously, Willie Irwin is keeping a hold. He's doing the comments for us on YouTube, and Willie Irwin's a lot older than me. Willie Irwin's actually a very, very old man. Willie Irwin's put, I was only very young when Souness arrived, but you felt it was going to be something big. Yeah. And I said, look, we'll come on to this. So Souness has arrived. Souness is at Ibrox. Before we get to any of the games, I think we might cover the Hibs game today. But if we don't, we'll certainly cover that in episode 2. Cammy, what did Souness change most at the very beginning? Because I've seen a few documentaries where he tried to change the diet, the way that he started doing all the contracts, he started taking control of the whole club. But for you as a fan watching, what was the biggest changes you've seen in the early days for Souness?
I think he'd obviously been playing in Italy, and I think it was just the, like you say, the change in there was something like players wearing flip flops about the dressing room, or that something as simple as that. Was he had obviously seen a lot of stuff in Italy and brought it over, and it was just a level of probably professionalism and bringing back standards that had
us freezing on a podcast. There you go. See, this is why the members pay their money, isn't it? Brian, you can carry on what Cammy was saying there.
He was just, I mean, he changed everything from the fitness, the diet, just the attitude of the players. I mean, he wasn't, as I said before, the out of the 25-man squad from the season before, only half survived because he didn't like, obviously, their attitudes or they were past. And he identified the players that he thought, right, I can make someone out of you, I can make someone out of you and you. So he kept the ones that he really wanted and then shifted out the rest that he really didn't want. And he identified guys that he thought, well, you're not going to be any use to me going forward, so out the door you go.
He was absolutely ruthless with the players that were there. Mm-hmm. The ones that he didn't fancy, he just shipped them out. He didn't care who they were, how long they'd been at the club. He just went, nah, you're not my type of football player. You're out of here. And I know there's one or two players of that time that still to this day despise the man because of that. I personally know one player in particular, and I'm not going to name him on a live podcast, that has not got a good word to say about Graeme Souness because when he came in, he just went, nah, you're not good enough for me, so off you go. And the guy went on and had a fairly decent career elsewhere, but just the way he just came in, and there was no airs and graces. It was just, don't fancy you. You're not good enough for what I want. See you later.
So was that Derek Ferguson?
Totally ruthless.
No, Derek survived.
Did Derek
survive? Yeah.
No.
I'm just trying to figure. If anybody in the comments has got an idea about who
I'm not prepared to say yes or no to anybody on a live podcast. I'll tell you later.
Cammy Curry Munchers said, "For fuck's sake, Cammy, stop saying stuff before I get to type it." So just shut up, Cammy. Basically, is what he's saying.
That's the most sensible thing you've said tonight, Mark. Well, let me say that about my son.
Yes, you're allowed to say that about your son. Yes, Curry Muncher. In fact, there you go. There's your question being answered. So, in your opinion, then, was he quite? I'll take us to Cammy. Was he quite harsh on some players? Was there some players that he let go that you maybe felt, well, he could have done a job?
I wouldn't say so. You know, he kept your Super Ali, Davy Cooper, Durant, Ferguson, Dave McPherson, Stuart Monroe, Ali Dawson. You know, I mean, I think he kept and that's one thing we will come on to. There was a lot of these guys played a big part in the season that was to come. You know, so although Graeme Souness made signings, there were good players still at the football club. There was young players that were going to be emerging. Ian Durant developed into Reflect, scored a lot of goals. McCoist was always a goal scorer, sort of situation. So although Souness signed players, he got the best out of the players that were there as well, and he improved players that were there. And I like to say Stuart Monroe, 15 grand from Alloa. Souness couldn't get rid of him as a left back. He was there for 4 or 5 seasons, and he just persisted through his own work ethic and determination, So I think Souness was very, he knew what he wanted, and that didn't just apply to the players that he got rid of. I think he was quite brutal with regard to even the coaching staff. I like to say Alex Totten was there, and I think they were all just see you later sort of thing. He knew he was obviously bringing in Walter, and he was bringing in his own people. He knew what he wanted, and he was very single-minded, and that set us off. With regard to the sort of attitude and the mentality that Graeme Souness had.
I think, Cammy, it was almost the thing that the club needed. It needed somebody like that just to come in and just completely wipe the slate clean and, really go for it, Because I don't think if he did that, goodness knows what would have happened to us. We would maybe just carried on the way we were.
Is there every possibility, Wilf, that maybe things might not have went so well for Souness if it wasn't for the fact that the English clubs were banned from Europe?
Oh, without doubt, I don't think Souness would have taken the job if it wasn't for that, because he must have known that he could offer European football to players that wanted European football that couldn't get it in England. There isn't a chance if English clubs were in Europe at the time. There isn't a chance we were getting England's captain and England's goalkeeper. There is no way they were coming to Scotland. Like him or not. Terry Butcher was a great servant to us, and he's always said when he first came to Scotland, he came up for a look about, and he's walking about the supermarket. People are walking up to him, shaking his hand. One big man, it's great. You coming to join us? And he says it's like coming into a different planet, And they wouldn't have experienced that had English clubs been in Europe, because he would just have stayed at Ipswich and done. He's already won a European trophy with Ipswich, so he would have stayed where he was and tried to win more with them. The English clubs not being in Europe was a great help for us, and Souness exploited that.
Hey, I tell you what, we will touch on the Hibs game, right? But before we do, sorry, Cammy, will you want to jump in there?
Wilf talks about Terry Butcher. Man United wanted to sign Terry Butcher at that point. And can you imagine a similar situation now? It was a fortunate situation, and it worked to Rangers' advantage over that summer and the years after that. The fact that we were able to probably offer these guys, it's crazy to think Rangers were probably paying more to Terry Butcher than Manchester United were going to pay, which is, can you imagine that now? Guys down there earning 300-400 grand a week. It's funny how 35 years on, the difference between Scottish football and English football couldn't be any bigger.
Well, that's right. Because Brian, back then, I don't know. I'm just guessing, but I would imagine from what both Cammy and Wilf have said, there wasn't the massive gap between Scottish and English football that there is now, was there?
No, in fact, I think at the time Rangers were the biggest spenders in Britain. They were lashing out money to Woods, Roberts, Colin West, Butcher. They were going for all the big guys down south, and they were able to outpay anybody in Britain, Liverpool included, which is unbelievable considering Liverpool were goodness knows how many European champions at that time. So we were paying huge money for these big English stars. That, as they were saying, English captain, that'd be like Rangers signing Harry Kane now. Absolutely impossible. No chance. But as guys were saying, they exploited the gap in the market where we could offer the European football and English football couldn't.
I can't wait to do the breaking news when Harry Kane signs for Rangers in the next couple of weeks.
Harry Kane's not signing. Harry Kane's not signing for Rangers.
We'll give them Brandon Barker as part exchange.
Can't do that, can we? Brandon Barker's away to Barcelona, part of the Messi deal.
See, there, Wolf stole my joke. Here is the question.
I'm not joking.
You see, you're the only person in the world that would actually believe that's possible. Well, we've got a question in from Connie Muncher, and it's talking about what we're talking about now. In all honesty, do you think the players would have came to Rangers if they had not been banned from Europe? We discussed how there wasn't, the gap between Scottish and English football that there is now, but was there still enough of a gap back then that there's no way we could have convinced the England captain to come to Rangers?
Yeah, you might still have got some players. You certainly wouldn't have got players like the England captain, like the England goalkeeper. Guys like that. Guys of that stature wouldn't have come. The level below them may well have come, but laughable as it may seem, they probably wouldn't have come to Rangers at that time, because you've got to remember that Aberdeen had won the Cup Winners' Cup in '83, so 3 years before Souness arrived. At the end of Souness' first season, Dundee United, believe it or not, were in a European final. They got to the UEFA Cup final and got beat by Gothenburg. So the new firm were doing it in Europe. The old firm weren't. And we went out in the first round, I think. Or the second round. It's just we weren't cutting it at all. So I don't think, without the European ban, I don't think they would have come up here.
And I think, to be honest with you, Martin, I think very similar to the situation now. Graeme Souness was probably a bigger attraction to a lot of these guys than Rangers. So Graeme Souness attracted in the same way that Steven Gerrard attracted Jermaine Defoe and guys like that. These guys would have known how big Rangers are, but having that figurehead and that icon of football as the guy that was going to drive the club forward, it's a huge thing. You go beyond that and you bring in Gary Stevens, you bring in Trevor Steven. It's the quality that came in under Souness, but that's for another day.
Well, actually, I'm going to ask you, because I hope you have researched, because I did ask you to research in that first season, but in that first transfer window, even if you like, who was the biggest or the best value for money signing Brian that Souness made?
I think you'd have to say Butcher, just purely because of who he was, England captain. As guys were saying, if it wasn't for the European football, we'd have never got him. I mean, when he signed for Rangers, I remember reading the paper just thinking, this guy, I'm going to wake up in a different world here, and it's not going to happen. But I would say Butcher was the biggest signing by a country mile. I mean, for what he had done for Ipswich, winning the Cup Winners' Cup and being the England captain, yeah, I can't see past him.
Well, see, I know that's the wrong answer, right? Because there is only one right answer, and I think Wilf knows who I'm talking about. So, Wilf, who was Graeme Souness' best ever signing in the first transfer window, blah, blah, blah?
Walter Smith.
Walter Smith, there you go. Yeah. How you got that wrong, Brian? I will never ever.
Well, I thought you were going for the playing stuff. So.
And did I say playing?
No, you didn't. No.
Walter Smith.
Without any question, Walter Smith bringing in Walter Smith was the single best decision Graeme Souness has ever made in his life.
100%, because obviously he knew Scottish football, and obviously Walter then took over from Graeme in 1991, and what Walter achieved, that's for another series to come later in the year.
Oh, right. Are you just deciding that we're creating another series? Is that what it is? Well, there you go. If you're on Patreon, you'll get the 9 in a row years. There you go. So, Brian, are you ready to apologise for that ridiculous statement you made when I asked that question?
Well, I'll apologise in the sense that I went for the playing stuff rather than the managerial stuff.
See the thing, Martin. See the thing with the signings. Graeme Souness signed 3 players that summer: Terry Butcher, Chris Woods, and Colin West. Graham Roberts didn't sign until later.
December, wasn't it?
November, December time. That was our Christmas present, was signing Graham Roberts. And Colin West got injured very early in the season up at East Fife in a League Cup tie. So for a huge part of that season, it was Terry Butcher and Chris Woods, plus the guys that had already been there. So. But it just shows you, if you start to build, you had Souness playing. He wasn't playing every week in the middle of the park. He was suspended once or twice. he liked a red card, and the referees didn't fancy him much. But Terry Butcher, Chris Woods, and Souness in the middle of the park, playing with Durant and Ferguson, McCoist and Fleck up front. You know, I mean, it's the spine was there. You know, he had a good spine on side sort of thing. You know, and it's but Big Terry, what a left peg. I mean, a bit. I'm not comparing him Connor Golson to Terry Butcher, but Connor Golson from the other side of the park loves a diagonal to Borna Barisic. It was a similar sort of situation. We played a different style of football back in those days, but Big Terry pinging 30, 40 yards, 40-yard passes. You know, I think it was the Winchester or something. I think was what the left peg was called. You know, but Big Butcher, as Wilf said, he divides opinion for what came after, but what he done as a Rangers player and a Rangers captain for the 3 or 4 seasons will always be remembered.
Right, I promise you we will cover the Hibs game. Right, I promise you.
Well, can I give you a bit of trivia about Terry Butcher before you do?
It's called the Souness Revolution, but you carry on.
It's relating to Graeme Souness.
Right.
During Graeme Souness' time as manager of Rangers, right, one player scored 5 goals against Rangers, and it was Terry Butcher. He scored more goals against Rangers than any Scottish striker did in that time that Souness was manager.
He scored some absolute crackers of own goals, to be fair.
That's some mad stat. That is a huge one. That's a mental stat.
What was the one where he hit was it the header? Was that the Old Firm in the 2-2 game? Where he booted over Woods? Or was it Roberts he booted over in the 2-2
game? The 2-2 game, Woods was off. It was Roberts.
It was Roberts in goal, yeah.
Right, well, listen, we've got all that to come, right?
Okay.
Just honestly, I'm trying to make this a series, all right? I'm trying to go in depth and keep everybody interested. So, I mean,
so you're going to go in depth, but you're away to miss out Souness' first game as manager.
I'm just coming to it right now, but I want to ask you a question first.
That wasn't his first game as manager.
There was pre-season games before that, Martin.
I'm not talking pre-season.
They still
Martin, I only came on here to talk about Paul Miller's testimonial at White Hart Lane. Graeme Souness' first game as manager of Rangers.
Right. Well, let me ask this question, right? And then if you want to talk about pre-season games, you fire away and talk about pre-season games. All right. Well, were Rangers a better team with Graeme Souness in it as a player or without him as a player when he was at Rangers?
100% of a better team in it with him as a player.
With him as a player, because I heard there was a lot of
no
people.
Question.
A lot of people spoke about, you know, when he came to Rangers, he was past that. He was constantly just getting sent off and booked because he was misjudging tackles, although I don't think Souness ever misjudged any tackle. I thought they were all perfect. But sorry, Cam.
I think he occasionally saw the wrong person in a tackle, but he certainly didn't misjudge it.
The 1st of January 1987, Rangers beat Celtic 2-0 at Ibrox. Well, 2-0 going on 6 or 7. Souness in the middle of the park. YouTube it. Anybody that's watching, if you've not seen it, Souness had a turn in the middle of the park, and you talk about arrogance, class. He had Celtic in the palm of his hand that day. That was his best game as a Rangers player. But he was imperious in the middle of the park. Absolutely superb. He wasn't the Souness that was playing for Liverpool, battering goals in for 25, 30 yards. But my God, he could orchestrate things in the middle of the park and control it and what have you. And it's unfortunate. It was too big a job to do player and manager. So he got himself a few red cards so that he could sit in the stand a few times, you know. But what a player, you know. It's Souness playing with the young legs round about him, Durant and Ferguson. Fantastic. What a midfield three, you know, brilliant.
Well, I mean, as you said, Cammy, he just sat back and let the young ones run riot. I mean, you had Cooper on one side, you had McMinn on the other, and sometimes you had Durant beside him, sometimes you had Derek Ferrin beside him, and he just let them go. He just thought, well, I'll dish the ball to you and you go and do the business.
Right. That says a lot about Durant and the young Ian Durant and young Derek Ferguson, that the genius that was Graeme Souness was happy to have them beside him.
Hey, well,
that tells you how good they were.
In the next episode, we're going to go through games and talk about the individual players within that and how soon it's helped them, right? So let's just finish on this fucking Hibs game, right?
What about Paul Miller's testimonial?
Do you want to talk about Paul Miller's testimony? Do you want to talk about it?
I do.
Wolf, take it away, Wolf. Take it away.
Soon as his first game as manager down at White Hart Lane, and it just emphasised what a great boost it gave the Rangers support, because there was thousands and thousands of Rangers fans down in London for that. You know, I mean, when you consider the season prior we'd finished halfway down the league, you know, and there must have been 7, 8, 9, 10,000 Rangers fans in London for that game. It finished a 1-1 draw. The might of Cammy Fraser scored for Rangers. Mm-hmm. It was a tremendous day, and it just you could see straight away the difference that Souness had made to the team from what we had the season before to what we were beginning to watch that pre-season. You can now talk about your Hibs game.
No, we're not going to discuss the Hibs game, Cammy. Let's just
we played Bayern Munich in a friendly at Ibrox just after that. The Hibs game. Let's go into the Hibs game.
No, we're leaving the Hibs game until episode 2. I want to come back to the testimonial because I've got a few questions on it, Cammy. Question number 1: do you remember it?
I do remember it, but I wasn't allowed at 12 years old to travel to London, unfortunately.
Right, so there's no point anybody else touching on the testimonial, Wilf, because you're the only person who's been to every single Rangers game for the last 70 years.
I do remember it. There was a big Rangers support. I think there was a bit of, at that time, there was a bit of trouble. You know, as happened, you know, there was always a bit of, that was the height of the sort of hooligan issue down south, and I think so there certainly was a bit of bother from memory. But it's a game that I look back on and I think, God, I would love to have went. I never ever went to the old White Hart Lane, been to the new White Hart Lane, but never ever managed to get there.
You're not missing much, Cammy. It was a shithole.
My dad he told me stories about it, you know, so I know all about it for that.
Right, well, listen, I think that will pretty much do us for the first episode. We will cover the games more in depth, not every game, but we will cover a good part of the first season over a few episodes. Dive in depth, probably into a few individual players. Souness himself, how Walter helped him. And we'll get right in depth into the Souness Revolution. So thank you everybody for watching. We hope you enjoy it, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.